My name is Nora Calloway. I am 34 years old. I am an insurance claims adjuster at a firm called Brecht and Lane in a mid-sized city in Ohio where the winters are the color of old dishwater and people wave at you from their cars even when they don't know you. I drive a 2014 Honda Civic, the color of old pewter with a crack in the passenger side mirror. I have been meaning to fix for 2 years. It happened when my brother Derek backed out of my grandmother's driveway without checking. He did not apologize.
He did, however, ask me to carry his plate inside because his hands were full. I have kept the cracked mirror.
Not as a reminder. Just because fixing it stopped feeling urgent once I understood what it meant about him. My job is to read things carefully. Policies, photographs, incident reports. Statements made by people who are counting on me not to read carefully enough. I find the errors. I find the gaps. I find the place in the paperwork where the story someone told does not match the story the numbers tell. I do it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I am very good at it. I am also the kind of woman who keeps a green pen in the breast pocket of every coat she owns. Not for any reason that would make sense to anyone else. My grandmother used a green pen. She was the only person I had ever known who did. When she gave me my first one, I was 11, and she said, "Red is for teachers, blue is for bureaucrats. Green is for people who are paying attention." I have been paying attention ever since. Let me tell you about the tin. My grandmother, Ruth Evelyn Calloway, kept a small tin on the kitchen windowsill beside the basil plant she grew from seed every spring. The tin was the color of old copper square, with a dented lid and a painting of a ship on it that had faded to the point where you could only see it in certain light. She had owned it for as long as I had been alive and longer. She kept paper clips in it. Nothing else. Just paper clips. I asked her once why she kept it on the windowsill instead of in a drawer where paper clips belong. She looked at me with the expression she reserved for questions she considered worth answering slowly, because, she said, some things look ordinary from far away and mean something entirely different up close. I was 12. I did not understand. I wrote it in my notebook anyway, the one I kept because she told me to. The one where I wrote down things adults said that I did not yet have the frame for. I still have that notebook. The entry is on page 14 in pencil, underlined twice the way I underlined things then, which was the only form of emphasis I trusted. I understand it now. Before we go on, if you found this story, please like and subscribe. Drop your location and the time in the comments. I read everyone. Now let me take you back. My grandmother lived alone in a house on Persimmon Road in Delaware, Ohio. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen with yellow linoleum and a window that caught the morning light at an angle that made it look like the room was breathing. She had lived there since 1978. She had raised my father there. She had buried my grandfather there, which is to say from there. The way you bury someone from the house they loved and then carry them 4 miles to the cemetery and come home to a kitchen that still has their coffee cup on the counter. She had done that in 2011. I had been 21. I had driven 3 hours from Columbus to sit with her. My father had driven 40 minutes from his house in Sandusky and stayed for the reception and left before the coffee was finished. He had a thing, he said. He did not say what the thing was. My grandmother watched him leave from the kitchen window. She did not say anything. She rinsed the coffee cups and handed me a dish towel. Some people, she said, never get bigger than the space they started in. I dried the cups. I stayed 3 more days. I drove back to Columbus with a jar of her strawberry preserves and the feeling that I had been handed something. I did not have a word for yet. That was the year I started going on Sundays. I want to be precise about this because precision matters here. I drove to Delaware every Sunday for 11 years. Not most Sundays. Not when it was convenient. Every Sunday. 2 hours each way. I left Columbus at 9 in the morning and arrived at 11 and stayed until 3 and drove back in the afternoon light that, in winter, went gray by 4 o'clock. My grandmother always had coffee ready. Not because I asked, but because she was the kind of woman who had coffee ready for anyone she was expecting. And she was always expecting me. We sat at the kitchen table. We talked. She told me about the week. About the neighbor's dog who had gotten into her garden again. About the library book she had read, the one about the woman who walked across Scotland alone. About the oriole she had seen at the feeder on Thursday, the first one in 3 years. And how she had stood at the window for 11 minutes watching it because she believed in paying attention to rare things. While they were there, I told her about work, about the claims that came in, the ones that were honest and the ones that weren't. And she listened with the focused attention of a woman who found human behavior genuinely interesting and never condescending. She asked good questions. Not polite questions. Good ones. The kind that assume the person being asked is capable of a real answer. She beat me at gin rummy nearly every time. She never gloated. She just shuffled the deck and dealt again with the efficiency of a woman who had been right for a long time. And did not need anyone to acknowledge it. My father called her on Christmas and Easter. Sometimes her birthday. My brother Derek called when he needed something and disguised it as a call about nothing. My sister Pam sent cards. Store-bought cards with her signature at the bottom, not a word more. As if warmth were a resource she was conserving, nobody drove to Persimmon Road on Sundays. Nobody drove there at all, as far as I could tell, except me. I did not do it for the inheritance. I want to say that plainly before the story goes where it goes. I did not sit at that kitchen table for 11 years calculating anything. I went because she was the person in my family who asked good questions. I went because the drive was the one part of my week that felt like it belonged entirely to me. I went because the kitchen on Persimmon Road smelled like coffee and strawberry preserves and the particular wooden smell of a house that has been lived in by the same person for 40 years. And that smell was, for reasons I cannot entirely explain, the closest thing to home I had ever found. I went because she was my grandmother and I loved her. That is the whole of it. My father's name is Gerald Calloway. He is 63 years old. He sold auto parts for 22 years and retired early on a pension that does not cover what he spends and is supplemented by a second mortgage on his house in Sandusky that he took out in 2019 and has not told anyone about, but which I know about because I am the kind of woman who reads documents when they are left on counters. He is not a cruel man. I want to be fair to him. He is not cruel the way cruelty is a decision. He is careless the way a person is careless when they have never been required to be otherwise. When you are the only son of a woman who loved you more than she required of you, you can spend your whole life mistaking softness for permission. My mother, Diane, died when I was 9. Ovarian cancer. I remember the hospital the way children remember hospitals in smells and textures, the scratch of the waiting room chairs, the particular stillness of a corridor at night. My grandmother came and stayed with us for 3 weeks after. She slept on the pull-out couch in the living room. She made oatmeal every morning. She never cried in front of me, which I understood even then was a choice she had made on purpose, and at some cost. After my mother died, my father did what grieving men of a certain generation do. He held it together until he didn't, and when he didn't, he married someone who was willing to hold it together for him. Her name was Carla. She arrived when I was 11. She had 2 children from her first marriage. Derek, who was 14 and already loud in a way that made every room smaller. And Pam, who was 8 and had the quality of a person who has already decided not to need anything from anyone. Carla was not unkind to me. I want to be precise about that too. She was not unkind. She was indifferent in a way that looks like kindness from the outside and feels like nothing from the inside. She called me sweetheart and forgot my schedule and bought the wrong shampoo for my hair every single time and never once asked what kind. I liked. My grandmother did not approve of Carla. She never said so directly. But when Carla's name came up on Sundays, my grandmother would put her coffee cup down with a small, deliberate exactness that said everything she was choosing not to. Let me tell you about Derek. Derek, Carla, single quotes. S-son-. My stepbrother Derek is 37 years old. He works, when he works, in construction management, which means he manages projects from a distance and bills aggressively and leaves when things get complicated. He has been married twice. He owes his first wife 11 months of back support and is currently being patient about his second wife's patience running out. He visited my grandmother once in 11 years. Once, Easter 2019, he stayed for 2 hours. He ate a full plate of her ham and then wandered through the house the way men wander through spaces they are calculating, opening closet doors and looking at the water heater and asking how old the roof was. My grandmother watched him from the kitchen doorway with the look she had used my whole life for things she had already understood and decided not to argue with. He told my father afterward that the house was worth something if the location was right. He said it like an observation. He said it like it had nothing to do with the woman who lived in it. I know because my father told me. He told me the way he told me things he thought were practical. He did not notice my expression. He rarely did. My sister Pam is 31. Pam runs an Etsy shop that sells handmade candles and has 3,000 followers on Instagram and a carefully curated life that looks warm from the outside and, from what I can tell, requires an enormous amount of management. She is not malicious. She is performative, which is different. She would have filmed herself being sad at my grandmother's funeral if she thought it would help her engagement. She did. In fact, filmed the drive there. She posted it with a filter. The caption said, "Going to hold my family a little tighter today." She had not visited my grandmother in 4 years. My grandmother called me on a Tuesday in March. This was 14 months before she died. I had just gotten home from work. I was standing at my kitchen counter eating leftover soup from a pot because I had forgotten to eat lunch. And it was now 7 in the evening and standing seemed faster than sitting. The green pen was on the counter. I had been going through a file on my lunch break and brought it home out of habit. Nora, she said when I picked up. Her voice was the same as always. Not thing. Not worried. Deliberate. The voice of a woman about to say something she has chosen her words for. I want to tell you something, and I want you to let me finish before you say anything. I put the soup down. I picked up the green pen. She told me she had been to see Dr. Yuen in February. She had been having pain, the kind she had been assigning to aging, and had finally decided to stop assigning that way. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer. Stage 3, which was not stage 4. But which Dr. Yuen had been careful and precise about in the way that careful and precise doctors are when they want you to understand what 3 means. She had known since February. It was now March. She had spent a month deciding what to do and in what order, which was exactly the kind of process she would undertake and the kind of timeline she would keep. She did not want chemotherapy. She had watched my grandfather go through it, and she had her own conclusions about the arithmetic. She wanted hospice, at home, when the time came. She had already spoken to someone about it. The paperwork was already done. She wanted me to know first. She did not want me to tell my father yet. Not because she was hiding it, but because she wanted to handle certain things before Gerald's feelings became the subject of every conversation. She said this without bitterness. She said it like a project manager identifying a variable. I held the phone with both hands. I did not cry. I held the phone and I looked at the green pen on the counter and I breathed in the way I had taught myself to breathe when a file showed me something I had not wanted to find. "I am going to come this Sunday." I said. She said, "I know. Bring that bread from the place on Mercer, if they have it." I've been thinking about that bread. I drove 4 hours that Sunday. I brought 2 loaves from the place on Mercer. We sat at the kitchen table and we talked, and she told me what she had decided and what she had already done. And I listened, and the basil plant was on the windowsill next to the copper tin. And the morning light came through the window the way it always had. And everything was the same and nothing would be again. I want to tell you about the attorney before I tell you about the family dinner. Because the attorney is how I know that what happened at that dinner was not an accident. It was a conclusion my grandmother had been working toward for a long time. His name is Martin Osei. He is 58 years old. He has an office on the 2nd floor of a building on Cleaver Street in Delaware, above a tax preparation service. And the office smells like paper and the specific earthy smell of a coffee maker that has been running all day. He has a framed photograph of his daughters on his desk and a small ceramic dish shaped like a leaf that he keeps paper clips in, which I noticed the first time I sat across from him and which I mentioned. He smiled. He said your grandmother brought that in when she opened her account here. In 1987, said every desk needed something green. My grandmother had been working with Martin Assay since 1987, that is 36 years. She had never mentioned him to anyone in the family. Not once. I met him for the first time in April of that year, 6 weeks after her diagnosis. When she asked me to drive her to an appointment and did not tell me where we were going until we pulled onto Cleaver Street, I parked the Civic. She looked at the cracked mirror. She did not comment. She got out of the car and walked toward the building. Come on then, she said. We sat in Martin's office for 2 hours. He walked me through documents I had not known existed. A will, updated 18 months earlier. A trust, established in 2009. Investment accounts. A property I had not known she owned, a small house in Erie, Pennsylvania, that had been rented out since 2014. Beneficiary designations. Transfer on death arrangements. My grandmother sat beside me with her hands folded on the table, watching my face the way she watched the Oriole, patient, attentive, in on something she had been keeping for a long time. I'm going to ask you to be the executor, Martin said. Your grandmother has named you. The role requires someone who can read documents without flinching, he said. Then he looked at my grandmother. She described you very specifically, he said to me. She said you were the one who used a green pen. I looked at her. She looked at the window. Let me tell you what my grandmother was worth. She was a retired school teacher. 31 years at Deller Elementary. 5th grade, which she always said was the only grade that mattered because by 5th grade a child had already decided who they were going to be, and the teacher's job was to make sure they decided right. She made a teacher's salary for 31 years. She had a pension. She had a house on Persimmon Road that she had paid off in 2003. She drove a 2009 Subaru Forester. She maintained with the precision of a woman who believed in maintaining things. What she also had, which nobody knew except Martin Assay and now me, was a habit she had started in 1989 of putting money into an index fund every month. Not a lot. First it was $40, then $80. Then, as the years went on and the pension came in and the house was paid and the children grew and the expenses of raising them stopped, more. She had never touched it. She had never talked about it. She had just kept putting money in, every month for 34 years. The way she kept the basil plant watered, and the coffee ready and the paper clips in the copper tin. The trust held $1.2 million. The rental property in Erie was worth $340,000. The house on Persimmon Road, which Derek had calculated as worth something if the location was right, was worth $290,000. I sat in Martin's office looking at a summary sheet with a green pen in my hand, and the number at the bottom was $1,870,000, which I had to look at 3 times because 3 times felt like the minimum required. My grandmother was watching me. You never asked, she said, which was not an accusation. It was an answer to a question I had not asked out loud. No, I said. She nodded. That's why, she said. She told me she wanted to see the family before she told them she was sick. She wanted one dinner, one ordinary dinner, with all of them there, before the diagnosis changed the geometry of every room she walked into. She wanted to see them as they were, not as they would be once they knew she was dying. She invited them in October, a Sunday. She made pot roast. My father came with Carla. They arrived 20 minutes late, and my father hugged her with the careful brevity of a man who has been told hugging is important. Carla complimented the tablecloth. She did not mean it. I could tell because Carla's compliments always go up at the end, like questions because she is checking to see if they landed. Derek came alone. His second wife was visiting her mother, which he said in a tone that suggested this was a choice he found puzzling. He walked through the living room on his way to the kitchen in that roaming way he had, the inventory walk, the one that had nothing to do with where the bathroom was. Pam came with her camera. Not a phone. an actual camera, which she told us she was using for a personal project about family traditions. She took a photograph of the pot roast before anyone ate it. She asked my grandmother to stand by the window for the light. My grandmother stood by the window and looked at the camera with the expression she used for things she had decided to find funny. My grandmother served dinner. She poured the wine. She asked questions and listened to the answers with her full attention, which is not as common as people think, and which made people talk more than they planned to. Derek told a long story about a project in Toledo. My father talked about his retirement. Carla talked about a renovation she was planning. Pam talked about her follower count and then seemed to notice this and pivoted to talking about a trip she was planning to Portugal. My grandmother listened to all of it. She ate her pot roast. She asked Pam one question about the trip, who she was going with, and then asked Derek one question about the project, whether it came in on budget, and both of them shifted slightly when they answered, because her questions had a way of landing in exactly the place a person preferred to avoid. At the end of the dinner, she brought out a plate of the almond cookies she had made every fall for as long as I could remember. She set them on the table. She sat down. She looked at all of us. "I'm very glad you came," she said. "I mean, that was all." She did not tell them she was sick. She did not tell them anything that evening. She just watched them eat her cookies and talk over each other and reach past each other without asking. And she held whatever she was thinking in the careful interior space where she held most things on the drive back. I kept thinking about her face during that dinner. Not sad, not resigned, clear, the face of a woman finishing an assessment. If you've made it this far, please subscribe and drop your name in the comments. This story matters more with you in it. Now stay with me. She told them in November. Not all at once. She told my father first, on the phone, and then she told me he had cried and then asked when. She told Derek by letter, which I thought was either formal or protective and turned out to be both. She told Pam, who called me immediately afterward, which was the first time Pam had called me about anything in 2 years. Nora, she said. Her voice was the version she used when she needed an audience. Did you know? Yes, I said. How long? Since April. Pam was quiet for a moment. That's 8 months. Yes, I said. Why didn't you tell us? Because she asked me not to. I said it without apology. It was the truth. Pam made a sound I had heard her make before, the sound she made when she was deciding whether to be hurt. She decided. She was hurt. She was hurt in the way of a person who has not been present and cannot reconcile that with their own story of themselves. She flew in from Portland the following weekend. She stayed at a hotel in town, not at Persimmon Road, which I noted without comment. She brought flowers, the expensive kind from a florist, and set them on the kitchen table in a way that suggested they were meant to be photographed. She sat with my grandmother for 3 hours. She cried twice. My grandmother handed her tissues and said, "It's all right, Pamela," with the tone of a woman who is comforting someone and also recognizing that the person being comforted is making a choice. After Pam left, my grandmother and I sat at the kitchen table. The flowers were still there. The basil plant was still on the windowsill. The copper tin was beside it. She's going to want to be very involved now. My grandmother said, "I know. You're going to need to be patient. I know that too." She looked at the flowers. Then she said, "They're very pretty." She probably should have sent them years ago. But they're very pretty now. My grandmother declined faster in January than anyone expected. The cold was not helping. Dr. Yuan adjusted some things. Martin came to the house twice to go over documents. I drove to Delaware every weekend, sometimes twice a week. And on the 2nd of February, I asked for a leave of absence from Brecht and Lane and my supervisor, a careful woman named Patricia who had the posture of someone who had seen most things, looked at me for a moment and said, "Take what you need." I've got the caseload. I moved into the 2nd bedroom on February 7th. The room had a quilt my grandmother's mother had made and a bookshelf with paperback mysteries and a window that looked out onto the backyard where the bird feeders were. I brought one suitcase and the green pen. My father visited on weekends. He sat with her, which I will give him. He sat with her and held her hand, and sometimes he read to her from the newspaper, the local section, which she had always loved. And she would listen with her eyes closed and occasionally correct something he read wrong, which was its own form of love. Carla came twice. She was uncomfortable in the way some people are uncomfortable with dying, which is to say she was uncomfortable with anything she could not fix or redirect. She straightened things that did not need straightening and asked me twice if I needed help with anything and looked relieved both times when I said no. Derek called 4 times in February. Every call, after 2 minutes of asking how she was, arrived at a question about the house. What was she planning to do with it? Whether she'd talk to anyone about the estate. Whether there was going to be a family meeting. I answered the questions I chose to answer and was quiet about the ones I didn't. And Derek, who was not very good at reading silences, filled them with his own reassurances. We're all just trying to understand the situation, Nora. I'm sure she's made good plans. Nobody wants any confusion, I said. I'm sure she has. Pam started a private Instagram story she called Keeping Vigil, which she shared with close friends, which was 140 people. I know because she accidentally added me and did not remove me for 4 days. My grandmother did not know about the Instagram story. I did not tell her. There are things you protect people from when they are dying. And the knowledge that your granddaughter is building engagement from your last months is one of them. She died on March 4th, a Tuesday. It was 5:42 in the morning. I know because I was sitting in the chair beside her bed. The wooden one with the arms worn smooth where she had rested her hands for years. And I was reading out loud from a collection of essays she had liked. A woman named Annie Dillard who wrote about paying attention to the world as a form of devotion. And I had been reading for about 40 minutes, and I looked up from the page and understood. I sat for a while. The room was very quiet. The bird feeders outside the window were still in the early light. The copper tin was on her dresser. I had moved it there for her 2 weeks earlier when she had asked me to bring it up from the kitchen. I had not asked why. I had just brought it. I called my father at 6. He cried on the phone, the sound of a man who is grieving and also does not know what to do with grief, which is most people, which is fair. I called Martin at 8. I called the hospice line at 6:15 because they had told me to call them first and I was still. Even then, a woman who followed instructions correctly, Martin arrived at 10. He sat at the kitchen table with me. He had an envelope in his inside coat pocket. He put it on the table between us. She wanted you to have this now, he said. Before anything else happens. Inside was a letter in her handwriting, 2 pages, green pen. I am not going to read you the letter in full. Some things are not for retelling. But I will tell you this. She wrote about the Sunday visits. She counted them. She had kept a notebook, the way she had asked me to keep a notebook when I was 12. And in it she had recorded every Sunday I came, going back 11 years. The date and 1 or 2 lines about what we had talked about. There were 417 entries. She wrote about the green pen. She wrote about what she had seen in me when I was young, a quality she called precision of heart, which she said meant the ability to care about something true. When everything around you was performing something false. She wrote about the tin. She wrote that there was a key inside it, taped to the bottom beneath the paper clips. The key opened a safe deposit box at First Federal Bank in Delaware. Inside the box was a second letter and a document I should give to Martin immediately. She wrote, "At the end, you came on Sundays because you loved me. That is the only reason any of this is yours. Do not let anyone tell you differently." I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Martin sat across from me. He did not speak. He is the kind of lawyer who knows when speaking is not the thing. Then I went to the windowsill. I opened the copper tin. I moved the paper clips aside. Taped to the bottom was a key on a small silver ring. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put the paper clips back. I closed the lid. Some rituals have their own timing, and this one could wait one more. Day. The family arrived for the funeral on Saturday. Derek drove up Friday night and stayed at a Holiday Inn. He came to the house Saturday morning. 2 hours before the service, wearing a jacket that was almost right for a funeral and carrying a coffee he had bought for himself and not offered to share with anyone. He walked through the living room again. More slowly this time. Pam flew in Thursday. She had a black dress that was too nice for Delaware, Ohio in March. And she wore it anyway because Pam had always dressed for the audience she wished she had. She hugged me at the door with more warmth than she had used in years, which told me she needed something. My father sat in the front pew at the service and wept with the open, uncomplicated grief of a man whose mother has died. And I sat beside him and felt a complicated tenderness for him. The kind you feel for people who are genuinely sad and genuinely absent and cannot seem to understand that these are connected. I read the poem. My grandmother had requested it, a Mary Oliver poem about paying attention, about being in the world as if it were enough because it was. I read it slowly. I read it the way she would have wanted it read, which was like you meant it, which was the only way she had ever asked for anything. After the service, at the reception at Persimmon Road, Derek found me in the kitchen. So I'm assuming there's going to be a will reading, he said. When does that happen? Martin's setting it up, I said. He'll be in touch. Do you know what she left? I know she made careful plans, I said. He looked at me the way he had looked at the house. Calculating from the outside, she always liked you best, he said. It wasn't a compliment. It was reconnaissance. I refilled my coffee. I handed him a cookie from the plate on the counter, almond, the last batch she had made in January. He took it without looking at it and put it in his mouth hole and turned back toward the living room. I watched him go. I thought, she had a word for this. She called it appetite without attention. She said it was the saddest kind of hunger because it never knew. What it was missing, Martin scheduled the reading for 2 weeks after the funeral.
His office.
Tuesday, 10 in the morning. He notified all parties in writing. I want to tell you about the safe deposit. Box first because the order matters. I went to First Federal the Monday before the reading. I brought the key. The branch manager, a woman named Gloria who had known my grandmother for 20 years, unlocked the door to the box room and left me there. The box was small, fireproof. Inside was an envelope and a folded document. I opened the document first because I am an insurance claims adjuster and I opened the evidence before. I opened the narrative. It was a deed transfer. The house on Persimmon Road transferred to my name via transfer on death instrument. Properly notarized, recorded with the county in December. She had done it quietly, with Martin 14 months ago. The house was already mine. Had been mine since December before she died. Structured so that it passed outside the estate entirely, I put the document in my bag. I opened the envelope. Inside were 2 things. A note, 3 sentences, green pen. This way nobody has to fight over it. You already know what to do with it. The basil needs watered twice a week and a photograph. Her and me Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table. I do not know who took it. Maybe the neighbor. Maybe Martin. We are both looking at something outside the frame and she is laughing and I am laughing and neither of us knows we are being photographed. It is the best photograph I have ever seen of either of us. I drove to Martin's office. I handed him the deed document. He looked at it. He looked at me. She filed this herself, he said. I helped her draft it. She drove to the county recorder's office and filed it. She did not tell me which day until afterward. Why? Because he said she wanted it done before the diagnosis changed everything. She wanted it done when the choice was still just a choice and not a strategy. He put the document in a folder. He labeled it.
He set it on the desk. The reading is tomorrow, he said. I know, I said. Martin's conference room held 6 people comfortably.
We were 6. Martin at the head. My father to his left. Carla beside him. Derek across. Pam beside Derek. Me at the far end with the green pen in my coat pocket and nothing to hold except the chair arms, which I held lightly. Which is the way you hold things when you already know what's coming. The room smelled like coffee and old paper. The clock on the wall was loud the way clocks are loud in rooms where nobody is talking. Martin opened a dark green folder. He read the preamble. He read the witnesses. He read the date. He got to the specific bequests first. The bridge set to the Delaware Public Library, which was where she had borrowed books for 40 years. The piano, which she had played badly and loved deeply, to the Deller Elementary music room. The Forester to my father, which was the right choice. Because whatever his failures, he needed transportation, and she was precise about matching things to need rather than to sentiment. He read the investment trust. He named the figure. $1.2 million, he said. The trust, as established, transfers in its entirety to Nora Ruth Calloway, granddaughter. He read the rental property in Erie, he said. Transfers on death to Nora Ruth Calloway, he said. The primary residence at 14 Persimmon Road, Deller, Ohio. And here he paused. He looked up. He looked at me. The primary residence, he said, was transferred via transfer on death deed to Nora Ruth Calloway in December of this year, and therefore falls outside the probate estate. The transfer has been recorded with the county. Derek's head turned toward me so fast I hurt his neck. What does that mean? He said, It means the house transferred before she died, Martin said. It is not subject to the will. My father looked at the table. He knew. I could see that he knew, not the specifics, but the shape of it. He had the expression of a man who understands, finally and too late. Something that had been true for a long time. Carla put her hand on his arm. Pam looked at her phone, which was on the table face up, as if the answer might arrive from Portland. Derek leaned forward. That can't be right. She can't just give someone a house. She can, Martin said. And did. The instrument was executed, witnessed, and notarized. It was recorded with the county in December. The transaction is complete. I want to contest this, Derek said. You're welcome to consult an attorney, Martin said. He said it pleasantly.
He said it the way a man says something he is already prepared for. She was sick, Derek said.
She wasn't thinking clearly. Martin opened a second folder. He slid a document across the table, Dr. Yuan's letterhead. A capacity evaluation, dated November. Signed. Your grandmother was evaluated for testamentary capacity in November, he said. She passed all 4 criteria. She understood what she owned, who her family was, what she was doing, and what her decisions meant. Derek looked at the paper. He did not pick it up. She also, Martin said, was evaluated again in January. He slid a second document. Same letterhead. Different date. She had thought ahead. She had given them nothing to use. The clock ticked, Pam said. Quietly, more to herself than anyone. She always did know exactly what she was doing. My father looked up. He looked at me. His eyes were red from the funeral 2 weeks ago, and from this, and from things that had been accumulating for longer than that. She loved you, he said. He was not accusing me. He was just saying it. He was saying it the way a person says the thing that had been true all along and that they had looked at. From the wrong side. Yes, I said. And I came on Sundays. He nodded. One nod. That was all. Derek pushed his chair back. He said several things in a rising voice, none of which were new and none of which were true. And Martin let him finish and then said pleasantly that Derek was welcome to consult an attorney and that Martin's contact information was on the card in front of him. Derek took the card. He left without shaking anyone's hand. Pam looked at me across the table. She had the expression she had when she was deciding something. And what she was deciding I could not entirely read, she said. Did you know? I said, I knew she had made careful plans. Pam looked at her hands. She did not speak again. The legal challenge came 8 days later. I had been expecting it. I am an insurance adjuster. I know what people do when they believe they've been shorted. And I know that belief and truth are not always the same thing, and that the distance between them is where lawyers make their living. Derek filed a petition to contest the deed transfer. His grounds were undue influence and lack of capacity. Martin had been expecting both. The capacity evaluations made the second argument difficult. The nature of my relationship with my grandmother, specifically the Sunday visits, specifically the presence at end of life, was being framed as the first. I undue influenced her. In this version, by showing up. I called Martin. He was calm in the way of a man who has practiced being calm about things that are irritating. He has no standing on capacity, Martin said. UN will testify and the documents are clean. The undue influence claim is going to require him to demonstrate that your presence compromised her independent judgment. He is going to need to show a pattern of manipulation. What's our response to that? Martin was quiet for a moment. He said 417 Sundays. We have the notebook. I said, we have the notebook. We have her letter. We have 11 years of records she kept herself. We have Martin Assay, who will testify that Ruth Calloway told him, at their first meeting about the deed, that her granddaughter had never once in 34 years asked her a single question about what she owned. He paused. That was the first thing she said when she sat down, he said. Before anything else. She said, I want to give this to Nora. She has never asked me for it. That is the only reason. I sat at my kitchen table at Persimmon, wrote with a green pen and a yellow legal pad, and I wrote down everything Martin said. Numbers, dates, names, sequence. The way I would organize a complex claim file. The way I had been taught years ago that the truth does not need protection. It just needs to be organized. I want to tell you something that happened in between the legal things, because the legal things are important. But they are not the only things. My father came to the house on a Saturday in April, not to talk about the case, just to come. He stood on the porch for a moment before he knocked, which I saw through the kitchen window. A man standing on his mother's porch. He had been in this house 10,000 times. He stood there for a full minute. I don't know what he was doing. Remembering maybe. Or just standing in the last place where she was. Before he knocked and had to be someone's son inside a house where she was no longer. I opened the door before he knocked. I had coffee ready. He did not comment on it, but I saw something shift in his face. He sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from him. The basil plant was on the windowsill. I had been watering it twice a week as instructed. He said, I should have come more. I said, yes. He looked at the table. He was not looking for a fight or absolution. He was just saying it, the way my grandmother said things, as a fact that deserved to be spoken. She used to ask me, he said, every time I called. She'd say, Gerald, when are you coming? Not in a guilt way. Just like it was a question that had an answer. I know, I said, I always said soon, he said. I said it every time. He paused. She stopped asking about 4 years ago. She just stopped. And I told myself it was because she understood I was busy. He paused again. It was because she already knew the answer. We sat there with the coffee. The clock on the kitchen wall had been there since 1989. It ticked the way it always had. The way it had ticked through my grandfather's presence and his absence, and my grandmother's 31 years of 5th grade and 417 Sundays, and now this, the Saturday after the hard part, when a man sat at his mother's table and came to terms with his own arithmetic. I do not believe my father is a bad man. I have said that before, and I mean it now. He is a man who was not required to be large. And so he stayed small, and small was enough until it wasn't. And now he is 63 years old, sitting in his mother's kitchen, understanding that love is not a feeling. It is a practice. And practices require showing up. I did not say any of this. He knew it. He had always known it. He was just finally sitting still long enough to hear it. Before he left, he stopped in the hallway. He looked at the copper tin, which I had put on the hall table. I had not moved it to its permanent place yet. I was still deciding. She kept that since I was a kid, he said. Since before you were a kid, I said. He nodded. He looked at it for another moment. Then he put on his coat and left. I moved the tin to the kitchen windowsill that afternoon. Beside the basil. Where it belonged. The court ruled on the undue influence claim in June. Martin had asked for a summary judgment. The judge? A woman named Honorable Patricia Crane, who had the reading speed of someone who did this work because she believed it mattered, reviewed the documentation and issued her ruling in 3 weeks. She found no evidence of undue influence. She found substantial evidence of a long-standing, mutually chosen relationship between testator and beneficiary. She found 417 documented visits, a notebook kept by the testator herself, 2 capacity evaluations, and the testimony of Martin Assay, who had represented Ruth Calloway for 36 years. Anwo stated, under oath, that in all that time Ruth Calloway had never once been persuaded to do anything she had not already decided. The petition was dismissed. Derek was ordered to pay a portion of legal costs. He did not pay immediately. He paid 5 months later after a collections notice. That is the kind of detail that does not make it into the dramatic version of a story, but that acclaims. A juster finds satisfying in its own quiet way. Martin called me. 2 words. It's done. I was in the kitchen at Persimmon Road. The basil was on the windowsill. The coffee was on. The green pen was in my pocket. The photograph of my grandmother and me laughing at something outside the frame was on the refrigerator, held there by a magnet shaped like an Ohio state outline that had been there since 2007. I looked at the photograph for a while. Then I poured a second cup of coffee and did not drink it. Just let it sit across from me at the table. The way she used to sit. Before I tell you how this ends, I want to pause. If this story has stayed with you, if there is someone in your life who showed up in the ways that mattered and you have not told them, please go tell them. Tell me about them in the comments. Tell me their name and one thing they taught you. I carry everyone. Let me tell you about Pam. She called me in July. I was on the porch at Persimmon Road reading, which I had been doing more of since the resolution. The evening light was the kind that comes in summer when it has a weight to it, amber and horizontal. And the bird feeders were busy with the birds my grandmother had been feeding for 20 years who did not know she was gone and kept showing up anyway. Nora. Pam's voice was stripped down to something I had not heard in years. Maybe since we were children, when Pam had not yet learned the version of herself she performed. It was the voice from before the camera. I was going through some things, she said, and I found the card she sent me when I graduated college. She'd written something in it. She wrote, "Pamela, you have a gift for making people feel seen. Don't let that become a performance." She paused. I made it a performance. I did not say anything, she said. I know you didn't have to let me into the house after the reading. You could have just... I would have understood, I said. She liked you, Pam. In her complicated way, she liked you, Pam said. Did she? She kept your graduation card, I said. She kept everything. She had a box, a shoebox actually, of things she called evidence. Letters, cards, photographs. Things people had given her that she was keeping because they mattered. You were in it. Silence. She asked you about Portugal, I said. She was interested. She just needed you to be real and you weren't quite ready. Pam breathed out slowly. I'm sorry I wasn't there more, she said. Not for the money. I know what you're thinking. Not for any of that. Just for her. I'm sorry I wasn't there for her, I said. She understood. She always understood. She just chose not to fill in the gap for you. Pam flew in for a weekend in August. She did not bring the camera. She stayed at Persimmon Road in the room that had been my room, the one with the quilt and the paperback mysteries. We made pot roast on Saturday from the index card in my grandmother's recipe box. The one in her handwriting with a note in the margin that said more garlic than you think, and then one more clove. We ate it at the kitchen table and talked the way sisters sometimes talk when they have stopped performing for each other, and are just left with whoever they actually are. It was not a reconciliation. It was a beginning. Those are different things. And I am old enough now to know not to call a beginning by a bigger name than it has earned. Let me tell you about Derek, because his story does not end with the court ruling. He called me once in September. I picked up because I believe in giving people one more chance than they've earned, which is a habit my grandmother had that I appear to have inherited, he said. I want you to know I didn't do any of this to hurt you. I said, I know. He said, I just thought, when a family has something, it should be split up fairly. I said, she split it up exactly as fairly as she wanted to. He was quiet for a moment. He said, she always liked you better. I said, she always knew me better. Derek, that's not the same thing. She would have known you too if you'd ever shown up. He hung up. He did not call again. Some doors close because someone walks through them. Some close because someone never came. I went back to work at Brecht and Lane in September. Patricia gave me back the same caseload. My desk was exactly as I'd left it. The green pen was in my pencil cup. Someone had watered the small cactus I kept on the corner of the desk, which I had not asked anyone to do, and which turned out to have been Patricia herself, who had said nothing about it, which was the kind of person she was. I am still living in the house on Persimmon Road. I had thought. I might sell it when this was over. Return to Columbus, pick up the life I had put in a suitcase in February. But February became March, and March became a summer of legal proceedings and quiet. Saturday mornings and a basil plant that needed water twice a week. And somewhere in there, I stopped thinking about leaving and started thinking about what I was going to plant in the garden this spring. She had a perennial bed along the back fence. Coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, something I have not identified yet that comes up very early and very purple. I have been learning their names. I bought a book, the kind with photographs. I read it on Sundays. The bird feeders are always full. I buy the seed in the large bag from the feed store on County Line Road the way she always did. The birds do not care that the hands are different. They come every morning the way they came every morning for 20 years, because the food is there and the feeders are there, and nothing essential has changed. The copper tin is on the kitchen windowsill. The paper clips are still in it. The key is back on the bottom, taped where she left it, because some things you put back where you found them, not because they are still useful, but because they are still true. My friend Ren has a theory. Ren is 40, runs a food truck, and is the only person in my life who argues with me about things that don't matter for long enough that we arrive somewhere neither of us expected. We met at a claims adjusters conference in 2018, which is not where you expect to find a person who will become the person who tells you the truth about yourself. But here we are. Ren's theory is that every family has a record keeper. Not an accountant, not a planner. A record keeper. The one who notices. The one who keeps the notebook. The one who sees what is true and files it, not for use, just for knowing. And that family, she says, is only as healthy as how that person is treated. I asked her once what happens when the record keeper is ignored. She said. Eventually, the records come due. In October, I found something in my grandmother's desk I had not found before. I had been going through the last drawer, the deep one. The one with the rubber bands and the expired coupons and the birthday candles that had been there since 1998. Under all of it was a small green notebook. The same kind she had given me when I was 12 and told me to write down what I didn't yet have the frame for. Inside was her handwriting. The first entry was dated November 1989. It read, "Nora came today." She sat at the kitchen table and asked me what the copper tin meant. I told her. She wrote it down in her notebook. She is 8 years old and she already knows that some things need to be kept. I sat on the floor of the hallway with the notebook in my lap and the afternoon light coming through the doorway from the kitchen. Warm and lateral, the 417 light. The one that turns everything briefly gold. I read every entry. There were 112 of them, going back 34 years, stopping in January when her handwriting got too unsteady to continue. Each one was a few lines. Each one was about something she had noticed, something she was keeping. On page 48, from a Sunday in March 2015, she wrote, "Nora drove through the ice storm." She said the highway was bad, but she said it the way she says things she have already decided are not going to stop her. She brought the almond cookies from the place on 5th. We played 3 games of gin rummy. She let me win the first one and pretended not to. I pretended not to notice. This is what love looks like when both people understand each other. I did not let her win the first one. I am not that good at gin rummy, and she was, but I read it 3 times sitting on the floor of the hallway. And then I put it in the fireproof box on the shelf in my grandmother's closet, where I keep the things that are too important for a drawer. It is a Tuesday morning in November. I am standing at the kitchen counter, which is where I stand to drink my coffee, which is a habit I cannot explain and will not attempt to. The basil is on the windowsill next to the copper tin. The light is the thin November light that Ohio does, white and honest. The kind that does not glamorize anything. There is a bird at the feeder. A nuthatch, which I have learned to identify because I bought the book and I am paying attention the way she taught me to. He is moving down the feeder upside down, which is the thing nuthatches do. The thing that makes them look like they have invented their own way of moving through the world. My grandmother would have named him. She named all of them. Not the species, their individual names. She had a nuthatch she called Frederick for 3 years. She was not sentimental about it. She just believed in calling things what they were. The green pen is on the counter. I have papers to review today. A complex claim that arrived Friday that has 3 inconsistencies I have been circling in my head since I read it. And I will sit down with it after coffee and I will find the place where the story someone told does not match the story the numbers tell. It is the thing I do every day. It is the thing she recognized in me when I was 8 years old and told me to write things down. The photograph is on the refrigerator. We are both looking at something outside the frame. We are both laughing. Neither of us knows we are being photographed. I have been thinking about what she said to me in October, in the garden, that last October before everything changed. I had asked her what she was most afraid of. Not medically, just afraid of. She thought about it for a long time. Long enough that I thought she might not answer. Then she said, I am afraid of being misunderstood after I am gone. Of being simplified into the version that is easiest for people to carry. I said, I won't let that happen. She looked at me. She had the expression she used when she was deciding whether something counted as a promise. She said, I know. That's why I kept the notebook. If this story reached you. If you have ever been the one who showed up and hoped someone noticed, or if you have ever known someone who left a record of love so careful and so quiet that you didn't find it until you were ready, tell me in the comments. Tell me their name. Tell me what they kept. I will read everyone. The nuthatch has moved to the top of the feeder now. Right side up, which is apparently also something nuthatches do when they feel like it. The light is shifting. The coffee is almost gone. I pick up the green pen. I get to work.